Okay. So the biggest reason I got out of film and wanted to do something that I found to be more a meaningful use of the days that I have on Earth, right?
Yeah.
Was a movie called Die Hard 5, where I was at Fox. I was the executive responsible for that franchise. And the driving reason to make Die Hard 5 was not there is a burning character issue that we have to see John McClane resolve.
Mm.
There is a thing that Bruce needs to do. No, it is a franchise, dude. We can project out very clearly how much money it will make. Die Hard 5 was awful. Thank God I left before that thing came out, right? There was no part of, oh, someday I'll tell my children I did Die Hard 5. No, I will hide that from them at all costs, right?
Welcome back to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. It's Andrew. I am so excited to let you all know that we are now in the top 40 best liberal arts podcasts list that got sent to me, and we're number three. So thank you all for listening to the podcast. And I just really appreciate that you keep spreading the word. So please make sure you follow us on social media. Instagram is Ivory Tower Boiler Room, TikTok, Dr. Andrew Rimby, and please review us on Apple, Spotify. It really, all of it helps. So I hope you just enjoy this episode. And as always, remember, there is an ad-free version on our Patreon. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. It's Dr. Andrew Rimby with a really exciting conversation today. I cannot wait to get into this topic. Basically, it's all about the Atlantic magazine had just come out with an article called The Age of Reading is Over by Rose Horowitz. And I thought that's actually really interesting because the
The irony is
conversation,
you read it. The age of
yes,
read
I
is
did
over,
read
but
it.
I read the article.
And I'm so excited because, Stephen Puri, who's joining me today, has such an expansive knowledge in the entertainment industry, but also about leaving the entertainment industry and, why did he leave the entertainment industry, but also what did he create after leaving that has helped, you know, combat this addiction age that we're living in, addiction to social media, to scrolling, to, people who are creative people who have found their time sucked away. So, how do we kind of get our time back and create? Stephen Puri, who joins me, you know, is was an executive at three film studios, raised 21 million, multi-million dollars in venture. Right. Let me say that again. So, Stephen Puri joins me after being an executive at three film studios, raising 21 million dollars of venture and running three startups. Some knows a lot of lessons on high performance, such as, what do we do with AI changing how we work?
Yep.
He's the CEO of the Sukha company,
Mhm.
former VP at 20th Century Fox, former EVP at DreamWorks. And I'm so excited because, he invented even an app to help us stay focused and, you know, get our time back. So welcome to the podcast, Stephen.
Doctor, thank you very much for having me. And for those listening, I hope this is an exciting episode because there are some things, obviously, that we want to cover that are helpful and things you can use in your life and ideas to think. And I think part of it will just be engaging and fun. And we'll try and balance the two for you.
Yeah, so, right away, Stephen, I know you're so enmeshed now in like flow states and like
True.
your app that
That's
you
my jam
created,
now.
you know, which, tell everyone what's the app that you've created?
Oh, so uh, in response to the fact that it has become so hard to focus, right? Our world is built to distract you. The $1 trillion companies, their business model is steal your life. They just want you looking at ads, right? So they've developed very good techniques to do that. And, my partner Tony and I, we believe very strongly that all of us have something to contribute. We all have something great inside. It's not, do you have it? It is rather the question of your life is, are you going to get it out or are you going to die with it? And we just wanted to make it easier for people to say, hey, you know what? I have this amount of time. I need to accomplish X. I want to do it in a way that feels healthy, feels kind of fun. Sukha means happiness and
Mm.
feel more in control of life. The result of being in control of your life is hopefully you do the things that, will help the world around you, whether it's write the book, start the restaurant, do the research, like whatever it is you may contribute. So that's what I
Yeah.
do. It's called the Sukha Company. It's a flow state app and it's a website, but we'll talk about other things.
Yeah, yeah, but what's the origin of Sukha? Because you said it means happy. From what
It means half of it.
language?
There's would you like a story? It's gonna be like a 60-second story. It's not a
Yeah, no,
charade.
I want the
You want it?
story. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So in the middle of working on an app, which you start out with like a working title and it's kind of cruddy and there's some bugs, but you get like everyone to use it right and give you feedback. So we were in that state, a few hundred members, and I was going on my honeymoon. I met Laura in yoga. We have a daily yoga practice. It bonds us. It's a beautiful moment for us every day. And all the craziness of having an 8-month-old child and the whole thing, right? So anyway, back before we had a child, we were going on our honeymoon, and we're flying to Bali, which is a great place when you do yoga to go on your honeymoon because you do yoga on the beach all the time. It's really fun.
Mm.
I was complaining to Laura. I was like, you know what? We have this working version of this app, but I have awful title. Like the names I have for this are so awful. I cringe to even tell you when I'm looking at it. Right. And I was like, how Amazon is like a cool name. It's not called like bookstore, like Nike's not called shoe company place, And I was like, I want to have something cool like that. And she said to me a really smart thing. She said, you know what? The next 2 weeks, everyone from the office knows not to bug you because you're on your honeymoon. Maybe in that moment of, clarity, the muses will speak. You'll come up with your own word. So we get to the hotel in Bali, and I looked at her and I said, I was thinking about what you said. You're absolutely right. I've been trying to do this one way too hard. I think it would seed my unconscious for the next 2 weeks is, do you mind right now if I just do like 2 or 3 quick Zooms with current members and say, what do you love about this? And maybe the words they use will bubble up over 2 weeks into a name, right? She's like, I'm going to the pool. I will see you at dinner, right? So I spoke to 3 people and I did the same thing. I just in the group chat said, hey, who has time to chat? I just need 10 minutes. Wrapping up the third one, I'm like 8 minutes in and I really try to respect people's time. So I was like, hey, dude, like, thank you so much. This is really great. I appreciate it. I'm gonna let you go, right? And the guy said to me, Steven, you asked the wrong questions. And I was like, okay, guy, I don't know that well. Thanks for that feedback. What was the right question? He's like, you should have asked me why I pay you. And I was like, we charge less than $1 a day. Like we just want this to be available to people. But I'm curious. Okay, so why do you pay me? He said, I found the last year that I have 2 kinds of days. 3 o'clock, I'm playing with my kids. They're currently 2 and 4. Or at 6 o'clock, I'm like, where did the day go? He said, I realized the difference is, did I hit play in your app in the morning? So I pay you because my kids are not going to be 2 and 4 forever. And I was like, you won that round. That was a way better question to answer than any stupid thing I asked, right? So I excited. I go to dinner. Laura, I tell her the story. She's like, yeah, that guy's really smart. We're going to bed. And she looks at me. She goes, in yoga, we hear all these Sanskrit terms like prana, your life force, and your karma, and your dharma, and your duty in life. She's like, that dude described to you the thing we hear in yoga, sukha. Like when you're in your lane, doing the thing you're meant to do, and you can do it with ease. It's the happiest that comes from that. She's like, that's what you should call your company. I'm going to bed. And I bought it. We called it the Sukha Company.
I love that. No, no, I appreciate that, Stephen,
And he's still a
because
member. I still see him in there sometimes. I'm like, thank
yeah.
you.
Well, like, so if your former self,
Hmm?
the Stephen who was
Back
in the
in film.
Hollywood industry,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know, saw like where you are now,
Hmm?
was your mindset, like, how has your mindset shifted? Because I'm assuming it might not have been as balanced and grounded in
100%
that
correct.
Hollywood grind.
I'll tell you one of the biggest things I think that I would realize if I did like one of those sci-fi movies where you get to meet your future self or your past self, right? Sort of thing
Yeah.
is I now, through having basically done the research and read what a lot of smart neuroscientists have written, and going back to like Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the guy who sort of named flow states, that psychologist.
Mm.
Now I've benefited from looking at a lot of that stuff. And you and I have talked about, how cognition develops and how reading and writing develop your ability to understand and synthesize stuff like that, right? Now, when I look back on the great screenwriters I worked with, like Chris McQuarrie, David Ayer, Billy Ray, Alex Kurtzman, Bob Orsi, Damon Lindelof, like all these guys that I worked with every day. I see how they, even if they didn't know the terms, even if they hadn't read the books, they had developed ways of working that respected this part of cognition.
Hmm.
And that is something I would have loved to have known like way back when.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so when I read the statistic in this Atlantic piece,
Mhm.
I mean, I knew that pleasure reading has declined a lot. I know that literacy is in a crisis as like a college professor, but to know that 30% of American adults cannot paraphrase or make inferences from
Wow.
multi-page text, uh, is very shocking. And I think, but at the same time, in this article, she makes such a big case about how we're reading everywhere. Like we're reading text messages, emails, Instagram, TikTok. Like we're being bombarded with text, but we're not being bombarded with long form text. So, like, as someone who I know you're really passionate about the creative arts,
Yes, true.
do you think that any of this just decline in sitting with text and sitting even in silence, like, does any of that have to do with how even the entertainment industry has shifted and changed when it comes to giving us material to
Right.
match this like addictive state of needing constant stimulation?
Okay. So
Yeah.
that is an answer that I think could include a bit of history to sort of say, like, what do we, that whole thing about history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So if you want to go really far back to whomever it is, we're talking like Hammurabi's time, about, hey, we've invented a system of making these coded sort of hieroglyphs that reflect what we're all talking about because we haven't been able to do that before, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
response was, oh my God, my people will never remember anything anymore now that they have a way to write stuff down, right? And sure, that was a way of thinking about this shift from the oral tradition, why we had these epic poems that had to be repeated over and over and over because they
Mm-hmm.
encapsulated the history because you didn't have like history 101 civics book.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you
the
had that
Odyssey
shift.
is a great example of that. This is
I
all
believe you just saw the Odyssey, Mr.
I
IMAX.
did. Which
Yeah.
there will
You
be
just
an
had to work that
episode
in
about
there.
that later.
Right.
But no, but like you're right, the Bard, like the way that oral storytelling traveled, fairy tales, folk tales. I mean,
Right.
I feel like mythology is deeply a psychological unconscious experience we all share because it's so early of
Let's
a literary
let's
form.
talk about
Yeah.
that because obviously I've spent a lot of my life working on story
Yeah.
and I have some thoughts. You may agree or disagree, but I'll tell you this is I believe that when we communicate to each other, written videos, in person, singing, right? Ultimately, the goal for almost all of it is to communicate some truth,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you think about the myths, right? For 500 years, for 2,000 years, we've told this story of Ulysses, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The reason that story has survived is it was a way of expressing some fundamental truth about life because we were trying to relate to this. Andrew, I'm your senior by 30 years. I'm your father. I want to relate to you like these stories about how to live, right? So you have these myths. Whether Odysseus was alive or Zeus or Buddha
Mm-hmm.
on a certain level is not as important as is the lesson true and will it be repeated and conveyed, right? Is it kept alive through these myths? So you have
Mm.
history, which we like to believe is fact related in story. We have myths, which we like to believe is truth encoded in stories that may or may not be, history. That makes sense?
Yeah. Yes, yes. It gives you identity and it gives you a sense of um like most of these myths involve obstacles that have the hero has to overcome, the
Yeah,
trials
there's the
and
hero's journey and the
tribulations.
typical sort of structure.
Yeah,
But even
yeah.
beyond myth, like I think fundamentally, we talk to each other through newspapers in ye olden days, right?
Mm-hmm.
Through TikTok shorts, whatever it is. We're trying to share with someone else a truth about life. That can be a beautiful lyric or a musical passage where in that musical passage, the composer is just trying to say, I want you to feel this emotion that I think is about life's truth. And they're not words. But when you hear it every time you cry, because somehow he or she did encode that truth, right?
Yeah.
So it can be mythology, it can be music, it can be art, it can be lots of things, but it's fundamentally the two of us saying, hey, man, I want to share with you this truth about life. And then you
Mhm.
choose the medium, right? So if we agree upon that, then I can answer your question, which is yes, we've had these seismic shifts of like, oh, it's an oral tradition. We learned how to write. Oh, well, no one's going to remember anything anymore. Well, sort of and sort of not, right? Then you had like television, and you probably remember, in the early days of MTV, there was a lot of conversation around, oh my God, like visually, the stimulation rate of cuts has changed. This is not like Edward R. Murrow or Walter Cronkite on the news staring at you, an old white guy reciting news for 30 minutes in a row. Suddenly it's like 5 cuts a second, right? And people talked about, oh, children can't concentrate, the stimulation of the retinas, now they need this and everything. And now what you're saying is represented in, I mean, I don't want to get political, but we have, for better or worse, an elected leader in the United States who absolutely understood it's not necessarily about truth. It's not really about the written word. It is about coming up with the things you want to be true, just repeated endlessly. The crooked Hillarys and the sleepy, just repeat these things
Mhm.
endlessly. I've ended 9 wars. Which ones? I've ended 9. And just you say these things enough. And he realizes that. And that's kind of where we are in this current world. I mean, you think about, remember Idiocracy, the Mike Judge movie?
No, but
Okay,
you
so
know,
anyway, so Mike
yeah.
Judge, he tells a great story about he was at Disneyland. He made this movie at Fox, by the way, which is a really funny thing. Having worked at Fox, it's astounding that this somehow got done. But he said he was at Disneyland, and I'm going to paraphrase his story, but he said, I'm there with, I think he and his wife were there with another couple. They were debating, like, should they have a second child or a first child or something? And they're well educated, PhD, the whole thing. And they're just ringing themselves up about, like, do we do this? Is this the right time? And he said, right behind them, there was like a very poor white family with like 8 children running around screaming. And he just said, I realized you do the math. That's the future. They're going to outnumber and outvote everyone. It doesn't matter if my friends here have 200 IQs. They can't even decide to have a child. Well, back here, like this family's got 8 voting people in their district, right? And that really informed the movie that he made about what does that turn into 50, 100 years later, you know?
Mhm.
And I think that's really what we're addressing here is when you arrive at a place where truth is indistinguishable from the falsehoods, like it is really hard. And you're right, the kind of critical thinking that you were talking about being able to paraphrase and make inferences and synthesize information, like a lot of that your brain is trained from reading, not necessarily from watching a TikTok, which I do watch TikTok. I admit it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to admit it, but I do.
No, me as well. Yeah, me
You
as
know?
well,
Okay,
especially
I'm off the
from
soapbox. I'm
business.
back now.
But, and I also think it's so interesting because Trump is mentioned in this article, mentioned in the sense of like those phrases that you were saying,
These little
they
epithets, just
actually,
like just like Homer did.
yeah, they like stick, they're easy for him to remember. They're easy for, followers to remember.
Correct.
They're easy. They speak at an elementary kind of playground level.
Exactly right.
Um, and I think when people say, well, he talks relatable in a relatable manner, that's what they're saying I can remember what he says.
Yeah.
But does that necessarily, correlate complex reasoning and thinking? I don't think so, but I don't think that's the point in this age we're currently in. I think the point is personality driven. It's, you know, the way that someone communicates in a rhetorical way
Mhm.
is the louder they are, the more right they seem, which, you know, I think we've got to be
Completely.
cautious of people who, have to scream to get their points across. Uh, but like, where do you weigh in, especially now? I mean, we have so much streaming services. The
Mhm.
content out there is endless. Like, in the 90s, when I was a young person into the early 2000s, I still remember going to Blockbuster. I remember
Wow,
how
there's a
much,
throwback.
yeah, yeah,
On your horse?
yeah, on my horse. But like, even like on cable,
Yeah.
there were only a few movie selections,
Mhm.
and when you wanted to see an older film, I want to go see Grease. It's not on
Oh,
cable.
yeah.
You have to go to Blockbuster and make a calculated decision of, oh, I'm going to rent this tonight.
Yep.
But there was a lot of other entertainment. If you didn't want to watch a movie, you would have been like, oh, I have this new book. I'll read that. So I think
Hmm.
we have so many options now that sometimes the options can just make your head spin. But I
Hmm.
also think the easiest thing could be like, well, I'm going to reach for my phone because this is what's currently near me. I mean, how much do you think this addictive element
Well,
is actually what's around you?
there's actually there are two parts of the answer. It's a very topical question. So one part is, and this was covered, I think Huberman did this a little while ago on Huberman Lab, where he talked
Mm,
about, yes, everyone says technology change is going to end the world, and like, oh, the steam engine is going to change. Like, he's like, every big technological shift has that. But he said, let me point something out that is unique in this, which is we have proven that we do crave dopamine. Like, it is a neurochemical that we like and we seek it out, right? So he said it's really funny because in the past, in all of human history, you had to generally do something to generate dopamine. Like, you gave a great speech, or you did a thing, or you somehow you made some achievement that people are like, I'm celebrating you. You did this, wonderful thing, whatever it was, right? Even make food, whatever. And he said, with the advent of the phone, we have zero effort dopamine. You don't need to do a thing. It is absolutely like just having a drug in a little metal rectangle next to you, where anything that becomes difficult, frustrating, whatever, your hand just reaches for it. And I understand this completely. I am guilty. Like, part of why we created Sukha is I was like, I need to feel more in control of my life. And I feel like when I encounter resistance, I could be working on like a feature, coding a feature, and the build keeps failing and I get frustrated. My hand, without thinking, will pick up my phone and go, oh, what? Let me just check my WhatsApps real quick and see if, Andrew wrote back. Or let me just check my ticket. You know, I'm writing a blog post and like I read the first two paragraphs and like, this is awful. I'm not to rewrite it. And you get frustrated and you pick it up because it's like, there's no effort required. Just take some dopamine right now. That is kind of scary. Like I mentioned, we have an 8-month-old right now. This is active conversation with ourselves and our friends who have little kids going, how do you properly give them access to that kind of drug?
mm.
You know?
Yeah, well, and uh this article was saying, Stephen, that so many parents right now, it's dropped reading to children has dropped drastically as
Oh,
well. So
sad.
like later in life or when children go into school, teachers like, and I've experienced this even at the college level where my reference points, the majority of the class, there isn't like a common background knowledge. So like I'll say, oh, like the lesson in Red Riding Hood with beware of strangers, and half of the students, they're like,
They're
well, I
lost.
don't know Red Riding Hood. And
How do you feel when that happens? Like, what goes through your heart?
well, it's a really, I mean, I think there could be a lot of professors feel frustrated or feel like
Hmm.
the education system is letting these children down. But I think that it's not just the education system, obviously, it's, the household. I think a successful student is one who's gotten so much support from their home
Hmm.
network.
Yes.
And when they get into the classroom, they're like motivated to learn, continuously learn. And I think I see it as a learning opportunity of, okay, now I have to like work harder at, pulling up that reference. And then like in the moment, us reading a passage from whatever I'm trying to
Hmm.
use. And then now we all have the common knowledge. Now I can go back and try to make that comparison to why I brought up the
Red
wolf
Riding
in Red
Hood.
Riding Hood to
Yeah.
whatever we're discussing. So
Yeah.
there's a little more legwork. I was actually really liked in this article that a German professor was saying they've always been teaching how to read in another language.
Hmm.
So now literature teachers writing English teachers are seeing that they have to actually teach the students reading comprehension as part of the
Which is astounding.
curriculum.
And what level was the German professor? Was it high school or college?
College.
Right. College
Yeah.
professor teaching reading comprehension.
Yeah. And I will say that the majority of colleges I, you know, communicate with, collaborate with, teach at, they all are now putting into their freshman curriculum specifically like very research driven pedagogy, making sure that students know how to not only use different sources, but how to evaluate the sources and even how to analyze the sources. So, like, there is definitely more of a reading comprehension being put into first year college courses,
Let me
which
just be the wah
is
wah of
interesting.
this,
Yeah.
which is we know water runs downhill. Agreed, right?
Mhm.
Things
Yeah.
seek the path of least resistance, like electrons on a wire, right?
Yeah.
So it's wonderful to hear what you just said. Hey, you know what? This educational institution or these particular educators are really involved in how can we get you to have to do critical thinking to digest this properly, be able to analyze it, synthesize new ideas, paraphrase, right? Is awesome. But what reality is that when you're in a world of LLMs? Like how do you actually enforce that and not feel like you're the instructor going, if you don't know how to ride a horse, I don't know how you're going to fly a plane. And they're like, no, we have planes now. I don't need to ride a horse across the country.
Well, and see, that's the issue is so many see reading or see literature as not like just an extra step to get through when they could get that information they think um online, or they could ask ChatGPT.
Completely.
And my my way to combat that is like the nothing is as powerful as your imagination, and nothing is as powerful as when you have to sit in the thinking in a, methodical way. Like when you get to the end of a chapter, you know, maybe you'll come up with the name of a company, sitting in the silence and the stillness of your thoughts is very important. And like something I'm so curious about, Stephen, is how do you weigh in when we have so many now Hollywood celebrities who are like trying to incentivize or entice the Gen Z and even younger generation, like, Reese Witherspoon, Dua Lipa, like they're trying to use their clout in the influencer space to create book clubs. Like, do you think that that's successful to try to reach younger people by like doing influencer? Looking for summer reads? The Gay and Lesbian Review, a bi-monthly magazine that features arts and culture conversations about the LGBT community, has you covered. The July and August issue is all about summer getaways and artists. So, for example, there are articles about David Hockney. There's an article about the sculpture in Central Park that some of you, if you've seen Angels in America, definitely recognize, by Emma Stebbins. So I can't wait for you all to get your hands on this issue. As always, there are TV reviews, film reviews, book reviews, theater reviews. So if you just don't know where to begin with LGBTQ literature, this is a great magazine to inspire you to add more books to your to be read pile. I love the Gay and Lesbian Review, and I'm so happy because I have a promo code for you. Go to glreview.org and get the print subscription or the digital subscription and put in ITBR choice for a free issue of the magazine.
Welcome to Severed, a podcast suite dropping new episodes every Monday. Severed True Crime and Severed Paranormal episodes deep dive into murder, mysteries, and the otherworldly in a concise format. A 7-minute story to frame the case with thoughtful analysis and our usual banter.
We sometimes find the lighter side of darker cases. We offer 3 spin-off shows, Severed Strange Stories, Severed Haunted You, and Severed Serial Killers that highlight the unusual to lighthearted topics from the digital dumpsters of true crime, haunted universities, and the minds of madness like Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer.
We are your co-hosts. I'm Harry Chambers.
And I'm Drew Hudson. Listen on all major podcast platforms, including Rogue Media Network and Radio Garden State. Follow us on Instagram at severed_podcast.
Yeah, I know that there's a
Dynamics.
certain, like Reese, for example, I know she's very smart about examining patterns. So for her to say, oh, Oprah did really well with this, I'm going to try and match that pattern, is very smart sort of thinking, right? And how do you reinvent that? Now, to answer your question more specifically, and I don't know much about Dua Lipa and her reading and initiative.
Similar to Reese.
Right. But I think there's a part of, if you want to talk about them trying to either lead along young people into reading and understanding that, or capitalizing on a trend, whichever one it may be, or a little of both. There's an element of that is, hey, you can performatively like read a book. Like right now, how vinyl became popular with Gen Z, where it's like, oh, I'm so retro, I'm listening to vinyl records. And suddenly some of the record labels realized they could make vinyl records again after 30 years of not making any or CDs, because it became a cool thing to have like a turntable and a vinyl record player. Did it ultimately change the economics of the business? No. Streaming, Netflix dwarfs any amount of new vinyl they pressed, but it kind of got some coverage because it was like, oh, isn't it funny? Young people are, recreating, these vinyl experiences that their grandparents had. So I don't know with the book clubs right now, how much of that is going to stick. I'd like to believe more of it. I'd like to believe that, they lead them into that. Ultimately, there has to be some reward at the end of it, not just being performative, being like, oh, I'm doing the cool vinyl and book club thing because I'm 22 years old or whatever, you know what I mean? So we'll see. But you brought up something interesting a moment ago. I think we didn't pick up that thread, which is you were talking about in this age of AI and very much LLMs coming into our creative world. How do you think about your role as a creator? I'm paraphrasing what you said, but this is essentially what you're getting at, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's something I'm going to tell you is, as when I was a studio executive at Fox, or a senior executive on the lot at DreamWorks, the thing I noticed is in action, there are about a dozen great writers, like in the $1 million plus club. And those are actually writers who write deeply from an understanding of character. They're like, let me tell you what Andrew is actually going through and how in this weird pressure situation he would react, right? He's in the elevator shaft. And when you talk to them, they have a deep understanding of people. Now I'm going to tell you this. The other 300 pitches, 400 pitches you heard that year from other writers, a lot of them write from having seen movies. So they're not writing from a deep understanding of like Andrew's character would do this. They're saying, so, it's like that scene in Die Hard where, he's got to get out. So he's going to, rip his shirt up and he's going to climb. You know what I mean? And there's a derivative. It's almost like photocopy of a photocopy sort of quality.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but
it's kind of like popular fiction that models.
Yeah. You can feel that when you watch that kind of movie, you read that, right? You get the sense this writer is writing a pastiche of other books and, movies that they've seen.
Yeah, so James Patterson is a good example.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You had to go there.
Yeah. Not saying he's not interesting, but it's right. I understand what you're saying.
Here's the deal. We have this phenomenon right now that is hot, which is large language models, where they look at you and they go, listen, human, I've read every stupid thing that your, species has written. I've listened to your YouTube stuff and your podcast. I've listened to all, right? So they understand the history of human creation to a great degree. Right? Not, obviously a lot's been lost to history, but, a lot they've studied. So when you ask them a question in the present, hey, write me a novel about, a blog post about, a screenplay about, what they do is they simply drag the pattern of the scene that we like into the present. Here is your history. I looked at the patterns of history. You like this. I'm going to give you in the present a version of the past, right? That is what LLMs do, period. You said an interesting thing about creativity, though, which is the place that is left for humans is when you do the thing that breaks the pattern, because the LLMs want to revert to the mean. You absolutely want a white 35-year-old male action hero who's going to do this because that's what Jack Reacher was, and that's what Mission Impossible dude is, and that's what, right. So you don't know, right? So when you come up with that weird thing where it's like, no, man, she's a broken orphan from a French suburb. Da, da, da. The LM's not going to give that to you because that's an outlier, La Femme Nikita sort of stuff in the creation. So that I think is what's really interesting, is not to say, oh, well, it's all going to be done. It's rather, no, LLMs are going to revert to the mean. How do you pull the future into today? Because they're already pulling the past into today faster than you can. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, and I think we see that right now with the rise of popularity of the films that are indie, the films that are making statements that are subverting norms, like Obsession is a good example. Backrooms, I would even say The Odyssey, looking back to an ancient epic to speak to our current moment about what does it mean to return home. And, it's never going to be the same when you have post-traumatic stress from war, right?
And you go
I think
back to
there's such a
Kansas,
deep
Dorothy.
war. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's that archetype of returning back to Kansas.
Yeah, these are classic stories.
And you're changed.
There's a truth about it, which is why we repeat it for thousands of years.
Exactly. But yeah, I think there's so many, like, not knocking the Marvel films, but I think there's so many films that, their task is to just deliver the audience what they expect, but not really necessarily counter narratives. Like, I'm always interested in, what is changing the narrative? What's the
that's the
Sixth
frontier of
Sense.
creativity.
Yeah, like what's something that's mixing genres together? And like what I'm curious about though is like so I think it's great what Christopher Nolan did with The Odyssey. But like why do you think, Stephen, though, the new Star Wars did not perform the way that, say, Obsession did, an indie, really low budget horror film that like just shows obsessive love and in all of its controlling, manipulative, possessive ways? Why does anything exist? Why is there something rather than nothing? I think that's a question we all, as curious people, have asked ourselves. And let me tell you, Professor Stephen A. Simon's new book is so thought-provoking that I can't wait for you all to pick it up. He provides his experience as a professor of political science and philosophy to explore that question with such a variety of perspectives from science, religion, philosophy, and even mathematics. He helps us understand what could possibly explain the most fundamental fact of all, that anything exists. So you can get this from broadviewpress.com. The floodgates have opened with science fiction as a genre in my life because I owe this to my husband, and I'm going to give him credit. He has really gotten me to think more about sci-fi, film, and literature. I have to say, Minority Report, absolutely amazing. And Alien, I mean, who doesn't love that alien coming out of that human body in the first film? So Professor Jason Haslam's new anthology provides a lot of exploration with all different short fiction, so many sci-fi authors, over 200 years, including sci-fi that explores indigenous futurism, feminist science fiction, Afrofuturism. Again, you can get this on broadviewpress.com. And last but not least, my upcoming episode with Professor Matthew James Wachinsky explores his book, which is Original Inquiry, A Guide to Research for Undergraduates, a great toolkit for all faculty out there who are just trying to find a book that helps their students understand how to collect research sources and then, right, the hardest part, build and organize their essay with all of these sources and to make a cohesive argument. I can't recommend Original Inquiry highly enough. So again, all three books can be found on broadviewpress.com. Use the promo code Ivory Tower for 20% off.
Are you a fan of classic Hollywood movies?
Are you a fan of queer cinema?
Then do we have the podcast for you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Christian Garcia.
And I'm Luke Delmar.
And we are your hosts of That Old Gay Classic Cinema, where we take a look at some of the greatest films of all time and analyze them through a queer theoretical lens.
Let's be honest. LGBTQIA+ people have been a part of Hollywood since its inception, and this podcast celebrates those artists and entertainers of yesteryear while also taking a closer look at the queer-coded characters and stories in classic Hollywood films long before queer representation entered the mainstream.
So follow us down the road of classic cinema as we give you a guide to some of the films that touched our hearts, brains, and even gave us courage to be ourselves.
You can listen to That Old Gay Classic Cinema wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok.
All right, listeners, we're ready for our close-up.
Okay, so the biggest reason I got out of film and wanted to do something that I found to be more a meaningful use of the days that I have on Earth, right?
Yeah.
Was a movie called Die Hard 5, where I was at Fox. I was the executive responsible for that franchise. And the driving reason to make Die Hard 5 was not, there is a burning character issue that we have to see John McClane resolve. There is a thing that Bruce needs to do. No, it is a franchise, dude. We can project out very clearly how much money it will make. Die Hard 5 was awful. Thank God I left before that thing came out, right? There was no part of, oh, someday I'll tell my children I did Die Hard 5. No, I will hide that from them at all costs, right? So that was a weird moment for me because my boss, who's the chairman of Fox Filmed Entertainment, he knew that I knew that script was no good. I knew that he wanted to move it forward because it's a smart business proposition. Again, it's not called show art, it's called show business, right? So he's a very smart guy. He's like, we can project out what this will make and just make it on the right number and we're safe. Smart dude.
Yeah.
But also a trade of the time you have on Earth for something you don't believe in. And friends of mine were working on like shooting Ant-Man 1 and they had scripts in progress for Ant-Man 3 and 4 and 5. And you're like, is this why we got into film? So yes, I agree with you. There's a certain amount of like the first Star Wars films where you're like, this is absolutely amazing to step into someone's imagination. And you go back to that well 40 times in a row. And after a while, you're like, oh, you money grubbing whores. Like, seriously? Because this is the spinoff of Luke's nanny's massage therapist, numerologist who grew up on a small, what? You know what I mean? And you're just like, please. So yeah, when you see something like Backrooms or you see something, again, that speaks to a more modern distribution. I mean, there've been a couple with YouTubers that have been like, let me cross over and do this, right? That does push into the future as opposed to, hell, we did 19 sequels and prequels and franchise, spinoffs from Star Wars. Let's do 20, right? I don't see the Star Wars movies anymore. I watched the trailer. I'm like, I can already tell you every single beat of that movie.
Yeah. Well, and how did being so close to the Die Hard franchise, what was it like for, the writer, Stephen Edward, is it pronounced as Swooza or Swaza?
Oh yeah, but you're talking about the first one as opposed to like Skip Woods who did the last one.
Okay. But what is it like for someone who starts a franchise? The first Die Hard at Star Wars, the first few, right? They are so
Have
popular.
You seen the first Die Hard?
Yeah.
You've seen it?
The first one. Yeah.
Which is the good one, right? Do you remember the very first image that John McTiernan shows you? Very first image.
Wait, no, remind me.
He shows you a close-up of a man's left hand clutching the armrest of an airline seat, and he's wearing a wedding ring. If you stopped the movie right there and you asked, the audience, what's going on here? A smart audience member would say, well, there's a married guy flying. He clearly is terrified. He does not like to fly. So there must be some really compelling thing that got him on this plane, right? This is not like some dude kicking back in first class, throwing back champagne, right? And what ultimately is that movie about? It is about a very topical moment a very much topical in that moment, a very topical issue, which was men was started looking at women and going, how could you make more money than I? And Bruce Willis was a blue collar street cop running around, jumping and shooting and kicking and trying to stop criminals in the streets, right? And his wife gets this big job in LA for this Japanese firm that buys a tall skyscraper and has parties with champagne and, shrimp cocktails and things like that. And it really spoke to a moment in time when suddenly women were making more money than men. And that said, hey, relatable story, divorce. Topical because it's happening because mommy left. She had a bigger job than daddy. And if you ever watch that movie again, there's a scene. Do you remember there's a black limo driver named Argyle? Picks him up at the airport. Watch the scene in the limo because it is astounding what the screenwriters, just Susan and one, got away with. Because Argyle bugs Bruce, right? John McClane. He's like, why are you here? Why are you here? And Bruce brushes him off. I'm not going to talk to you. I'm grumpy. I'm grumpy beat up guy, right? And finally he gets him to say, well, my wife got this big job that's coming in. And Argyle looks at him and in the dialogue of the movie basically says the movie to him in a sentence or two. He goes, okay, so let me get this straight. Your wife left you for some big job and you came out here like a caveman to throw her over your shoulder and bring her home. And Bruce kind of laughs. He goes, yeah, something like that. That is the movie. That is the entire movie explained to you in the front seat of the limo. And it works because the best movies, if you strip out the terrorists and the space laser and the photon torpedoes and all the, the ghosts and the aliens, they are a story about a family and it is relatable as F.
Yeah. Well, and even like the writers, like are there writers who get frustrated when a franchise continues?
Aren't all writers frustrated?
Yeah, well, that's true. But like who get frustrated because like they like their original conception, like they just feel, oh, the studio is trying to make as much money as possible. I don't really know where to take
it. And
if
you don't understand that film is a collaborative medium, you're going to be frustrated. If you want to be precious and you have a relationship with an editor, or you can just self-publish your book, write a novel, get your idea out there the way you want. But film, when you suddenly go, hey, there's $250 million on the line, there are a lot of people who are watching that money who have their thoughts on how to make sure they recoup it. So yes, if you want to be a screenwriter, it is the life of being rewritten. Even in the post-production suite, even in editing, the editor is basically rewriting your work. And you have to be okay with that.
Yeah, well, and what do you think about all of this? Because I feel like these nostalgia films that are now really popular. I mean, I've been interested in The Devil Wears Prada 2, saw it, really liked it. But then I just heard The Parent Trap is going to come back with Lindsay Lohan. I feel like,
oh my God.
Right, we had Freaky Friday, Freakier Friday.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that there's substance with these nostalgic reboots or sequels, or do you think
it doesn't matter, Andrew?
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. You are talking about a business. It is as simple as saying hey man, why aren't you selling those strawberry cupcakes anymore? I see the vanilla, I see the chocolate because we got rid of the strawberry. And the bakery owner is because they weren't selling, dude. I don't make the strawberry cupcakes for my health, right? It is the exact same thing with film. You as an audience member, or I, can rail to the stars about why don't they make quality voting, right? The bottom line is we voted last year with our dollars for what we're going to see this year, because every studio greenlight meeting has a bunch of people trying to justify why this $150 million bet is safer than that $150. And this is why we're going to greenlight movie 1, not movie 2. And it's often, well, last year the kids loved seeing Hunger Games, and this is the same kind of YA novel and has an early. Let's just make that. It's that simple. It is not about art. It is a business. At that amount of money on the table, the conversation is about returns.
Yeah. And that's where I will say, I appreciate articles that spread the light of the alarming rate of literacy to encourage more people to read. But what I did like about this, it did show the other side, which is there's a concerted niche group who are the reading enthusiasts
Mm-hmm.
who will read not just the bestsellers, right? And in history, the best-selling books are usually not the ones that get studied. Like it, Virginia Woolf's books weren't all bestsellers. Like,
Right.
you know, um, the things that we see as classics were not the ones that were the top books that were selling, but
Mm-hmm.
they're the ones that made a statement, right? Just like film
Right.
too. Um, so what interests me though is how someone like, right, we brought up Reese Witherspoon,
Mm-hmm.
how her Hello Sunshine company um has, I want to say, acquired, yes, was acquired by Blackstone, like,
Like
put
eight
money
hundred
into
million
it.
dollars or something crazy, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And Blackstone is really invested in AI data centers. And then Reese Witherspoon makes a statement that, women can't get lost behind with the AI revolution. Make sure that, AI's not going away. So don't lament about it, but rather get in front of it. And,
Smart
you know,
message,
yeah, I
right?
think there's some who see that as realistic, and then there's others who kind of see it as her turning her back on the creative arts for like creating a book club and all of that. And they're like, well, what does that mean about creative work? Like, do you think that the creative work should also be using AI? Like, I do think it's a slippery slope, and some accused
Yes.
her also being bought out by AI companies to make that message, you know, and she says she wasn't paid any money for that. Okay. I, you know, guess I
Reese is
believe
very
that.
smart. She's a very smart
Yeah, no,
mercenary.
absolutely.
Yeah. So,
My question, you know, is more AI, you know, isn't going away,
mhm.
but we, the consumers, have a say, as always, of what we want to do, with a tool, but also ethically being consumers. And I think like that's my question with you, Stephen, is like, where do you think, how do you weigh in on like the ethical dilemmas right now about AI, and especially when it comes to, the creative arts
Mhm.
and, people saying we can use AI, but it won't replace the creative work. Do you think that
Okay.
that's
I think
true? Can you
the
separate it
strongest,
like that?
yeah, the strongest statement, putting my money where my mouth is in creating Sukha, which is flat out created. So these small number of people who feel they have something to create. Our
Yeah.
membership is largely writers, engineers, and designers, right? People who sit on their laptops have to create things, and they can do that in a better environment or a worse one. They can feel more in control of their life or less, right? So that is what we created. And here's the thing is as much as, in running this, I meet tons of people who are like, oh my God, I need that. I need it. Yet there are way more people using Instagram than there are Sukha, right? Because Sukha is actually, you're going to do work. So if you have work to do, if you want to write something great, you want to go in the zone. You did a great up. I can't remember her name. There's a woman you had on who talked about dopamine. Who was that?
Oh, yes, Laurie Egan.
Yeah, exactly. And she was on multiple times, wasn't
Yeah,
she?
she's a psychological thriller writer.
Right, exactly. You
Yeah,
talked
yeah,
about
yeah.
Patricia. Yeah. That one.
Highsmith.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
There was a part of that episode where you spoke about this, and it is absolutely true. Saying, hey, you know what? As much as people can complain about, oh God, this thing and that thing, their behavior is what creates the future. So the ones that say, hey, I do want to write a novel. I do want to write a screenplay. I do want to design a beautiful thing. You find success, and I've seen this because you surround yourself with the allies, with the tools, with the people, with the thinking that supports that. And that's where, when you ask me where I fit in on that, that is where I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to take a left turn in life. I'm going to create the most beautiful tool we possibly can, make it better every night so people can get in the zone, which are the words that she used in that episode, which I hear a lot from people. Flow states, not everyone knows what a flow state is. We can define it if you want for this episode, but in the zone, people talk about that a lot. Writers, I was in the zone, coders, engineers.
I'm on fire, like
I'm
a
on
sports
fire, exactly.
player. Yeah.
It's just that thing, right? Like when we were doing our website for developers, a phrase that came up a lot with the developers that I used was when the code flows. They're just like, there's some days when the code just flows. And it's just like, it kind of like the app writes itself or my feature writes itself, right? And how do you have more of those experiences like what she was saying about being in the zone? That, for the people who raise their hand and say, I'm not going to go to my grave with this thing still inside me. I refuse. Most people are. The graveyards are full of riches, as they say, right? But those people raise their hand and go, no, man, I'm going to write the book. Get the tools, get the allies, get the friends who support that, who ask you like, hey, man, you're working on your first chapter this week. How did that go? Oh, did you ever write that character Bible? Can I read it? Can I give you thoughts? Right? That's what you do.
Yeah. And that's why writers groups, accountability, right? Like what
Writers
you've
groups are
created is
fantastic.
accountability.
Yep.
And it's even like apps that track your fitness, right? Like
Yep.
our watches that are linked. I mean, people want to get those 10,000 steps, even though they're like, experts say 10,000 is just like a number that they used in the
Do you
past.
know where that came from?
No, can you? I remember it vaguely, but where did it come
there was a
from?
pedometer. I think it was the early 1970s or late 60s in Japan. There was a pedometer that measured your feet, and the marketing guys were looking for a name for that, and they saw that the Japanese character for 10,000 looked like a man walking, and they just made up this whole marketing story around how it's healthy to do 10,000, and they made their pedometer this Japanese, that was the name of their pedometer, this thing. And that turned into, Tim Cook on stage saying, get your 10,000 steps, which is hilarious because there's no research to actually back that up. There's research, I think it points to like 7 or 8,000, but the 10,000 thing was solely because the character looks like a little man walking.
Yeah. Well, it's even like, I'm going to do Pilates later.
And look at you.
Yeah, I love it. Well, you have your yoga. Yeah. And I love yoga too. But, like on my app, right? Apps are fascinating because on LA Fitness, right? I sign up for my class. If it's like 12 hours and less, I'll get charged if I cancel. So it's like, oh no, I better not get charged. So I got to do the class. It's like there's psychological things. There's so much psychology in the gamification of apps. And I think like Noom, right? Popular with dieting. But like what you're doing too, like, so what have people said about, the Sukha company, Stephen, that really excites you of like how they're able to achieve that flow state?
I'll tell you straight up, this is the best moment in doing this. So we have a group chat. Just to describe the app very simply.
Yeah.
We looked at Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's research. He's the guy who named flow states. He said, his thesis was if you talk to high performers in different disciplines, like athletes and artists and scientists, he's like, there's something weird about how when they talk about their high concentration state, they describe it in very similar ways, even though what they're doing is very different. He's like, there's something there about the brain. And he was the one who wrote the book Flow, which is why I call it flow state, right? So a lot of what we've done, and by the way, nothing that I'm saying is because I'm smart. It is just that I have gone and read a lot of the people who have thought about this, like the Kotlers and the Newports and the Nears and all the guys.
Well, that's what makes you smart, is you're constantly seeking knowledge.
We're seeking knowledge. I wanted to make this thing great for myself, right? I want to have a beautiful way of getting in the zone, and I block out my mornings to do in 3 hours my whole day's worth of work, just totally in the zone focused, right? So we built, the thing that has scientific flow music, and it has, blocks your apps that distract you in your phone, all this stuff, right? But here's the important thing: is the answer to your question is, I deliberated about putting a group chat in the app. Part of me said, oh, distracting, you're chatting with other people. Other part of me is like, but community is powerful, right? And there was one woman I talked to again. I like talking to our members where I pitched this idea. And one woman said to me, somebody made up my mind. She said, you know what? I can go to the Nike store and buy a pair of shoes. They will sell me a left and a right shoe. I can go run. It works. She's like, there's a reason 100 million people belong to the Nike Run Club. Because you're accountable and it feels better to run with people. In the days that you suck, your friends lift you up. And the day your friend sucks, you lift her up and it feels good, right? She's like, do it. So we put this group chat in there. This is important to this story. So once a day, when you finish something, you can share what you finished. If you're proud of it, like, oh, I finished a chapter of my book, whatever, you can post it there. It goes like, oh, Andrew finished chapter 14 of his book in 2 hours, right? And it's fun. People can be like, share your book, or, designers say, I finished a website for a client. Hey, post the URL. Let's go look at it, right? It's a nice feeling of like you're not alone. You're in it together, right? So there's a member, this guy, Roy King, who posted, this is last spring, finished my dissertation. And people in the group chat were like, hey, dude, you sort of like mic dropped that one like it was like your daily work. Like, that's kind of a big deal, right? And he said, listen, I'm an assistant vice principal of a high school in Missouri. I have been working on my PhD in engineering while doing that, while being a dad and while being a husband. He said, so I find like during the week, there's about an hour window after school before like my dad and my husband life kicks in. I can use that for my engineering studies and then a little bit of time on the weekends. So it goes to supercharge that hour that I get. I use Sukha.
Yeah.
I finished my dissertation. I turned it in, but don't get too excited. Okay. He's like, I still have to go and defend it. I mean, you know this very well. He's like, like 2 weeks from Monday, whatever, I've got to go in front of the panel. And, everyone's like, okay, cool. That weekend going into the Monday, a number of people that I know do not know him, like people in China and South America and Europe, posted like, hey, good luck, Roy. Hey, Roy, pulling for you, man. Oh, you got this, Roy. It was really nice to see that kind of sense of community, right? So on Monday, Roy doesn't post anything. Finally, someone was like, anyone talk to Roy? Did it go okay? Like, has anyone heard anything, right? And nothing. And Tuesday morning, he logged in and he posted, you may now call me Dr. King. People
that's
went
amazing.
ape shit. Wow. And I was like, that is why Tony and I do what we do. Because he's like, damn it, I am not going to let this go. I'm going to get my PhD. And he did. And he defended it. And he became a doctor. And he's like, this helped me make good use of that 1 hour a day. Because he's a good dad, from what I understand, and a good husband and a good vice principal. And that is a lot to bite off. But he was one of those people who's like, I'm not going to the graveyard with this inside me. I'm going to do it. And he did it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's amazing. I mean, that accountability is important and
right?
So important psychologically. And it's like even optimizing. I mean, we hear that term optimize your time.
I know.
All the time. But like even there's a nonfiction book club WhatsApp that I'm a part of, like here in North Jersey. And like he'll recommend like a nonfiction book. So the new one is How to AI by Christopher Mims. And it says AI is nothing to be afraid of. AI is merely software. It's great at some things and at least right now terrible at others. But for workers who take time to experiment with AI and develop expertise, it'll make them more productive, more creative, save them time, give them job security, boost their income. So it's kind of, addressing all those concerns we've discussed. But like at the end of the day, right, in my opinion, I think this AI crisis, a lot of it, I think, is more not just about AI. I think it's a crisis in what those who come to seek your app are experiencing, which is their time just feels so divided between things that they don't feel connected in a community. And I think like the main thing is our socializing. How do we, enjoy the work we do and socialize and feel productive, and not isolate ourselves in like these silos? Like, because I think there's a great community you can build on Instagram, on TikTok, finding book recommendations, finding tips. But again, I think it comes back to what decisions are we making during the day to optimize our experience of whatever task we're trying to do. And I think that's great. An hour is really all you need, in my opinion. An hour of undivided writing time is
Right.
usually the best writing I do.
I
Like
I
a
completely agree
daily
with you.
one
And
hour writing
it is
experience.
easy to underestimate what you can get done in a focused hour.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there are people who I think are like, oh, I need 8 hours to do this task. And it's like,
God bless.
yeah, but and I don't think that is ideal, and I don't think that's realistic. And I also think um in like our current lives, especially most writers, that's not their full-time job.
Mhm.
They have other jobs to,
Yeah.
make
We
ends
all
meet.
have lots of things pulling us. It may not be a job, but it may be being a wife or a husband or a dad or a mom or,
Yeah,
taking care of your parents or like, yeah. So if you can
exactly.
carve out that little time to go, I am going to do the thing, my hat is off to you.
Well, yeah, and I think like we all experience writer's block, even if we're not writers. I think
Mhm.
the block could be, you know, you don't know where you're going to move in your job. You don't know what if you want to stay in that job and maybe you want to transition to something else or you want to go back to college or whatever the block is in your life. Um, I think that what gives me optimism is like reading's not going away, the creative arts aren't going away. Um, if anything, I think we're all just trying to understand. The majority of us are just trying to understand how to communicate effectively
Yep.
and how to communicate when people don't now have the same nomenclature that's shared. So like, we can't all assume, like I can't assume what, you saw this morning or read this morning. You don't know what
Mhm.
I did, where, you know, in the past, in the 50s, everyone was watching the same news network, you know.
Correct.
So in that way, we've shifted in our how our knowledge is being
I do have a
delivered.
flock camera on you, so I know what you did this morning.
Yeah. No, you were watching me. I know. I was like, why is that plant moving around? No.
Okay, so you saw that. Okay, we're gonna
I
work on
did
that.
say
That
it.
was Plant V1.
I did say it. But yeah, so like where's your optimism, Stephen, right now in currently obviously we're in some
Mhm.
kind of tech communication revolution of
Mhm.
sorts. So where do you see the optimism in the tools that are around us?
I'll tell you, I'm going to give you two sides of that answer, which is the optimism is that ultimately, I think we do as a population gravitate toward the right things.
Mm,
The pessimism is that sometimes the structure in which these desires get respected or not respected, let's say,
mhm,
can be bent to such a degree that you end up in a like what's happening, in Hungary or Turkey, what's happening in Russia. So and where does that take us? Like the sort of binge and purge of, are we a global economy? Are we all working together? Are we part of NAFTA? Are we part of helping the EU? Are we part of NATO? Like that sort of thing? Or are we America and screw everyone else? We're putting up tariffs. We're breaking our contracts with every other country. Like that sort of binge and purge
mm,
mentality is driven where it can bend these forces of like, hey, man, I do want interesting entertainment. And I do believe all men are created equal and we should have certain inalienable rights, right? So suddenly you have like, hey, let's dismantle education. I want the populace to be dumb and I want them to only understand epithets that I give them, like Crooked Hillary and Sleepy Joe. And I'm repeat these 1,000 times because I really don't want people with critical thinking skills, right? Stop that,
mm.
right? Just listen to me. Truth, I think actually Trump said, truth is what I say it is, which is like so Orwellian. It's
Oh
astounding,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that is really my answer, which is I think there's an optimism around this, but ultimately the structures that are around this sort of the people's desire, it's a scary moment right now.
Yeah, well, and I think you're right. And what the people desire,
Mhm.
the majority isn't matching the um higher structure.
Mm-hmm.
Like the government isn't matching what the people want. And I think like that's where the tension is existing. And
Yep. And let us
I don't
hope
think
that
that's
it,
permanent.
yeah. And I'm not saying politically on either end of the political
Yeah.
spectrum is right. But what I am saying is that I think there are things which are, the constitutional contract we had as people. There's a lot of truth in there where you're saying, like, hey, man, we believe we're equal. You are black, Andrew. I am Chinese. I don't view you as more or less than I am because you're black or I'm Chinese. You know what I mean? Like, you're from an African country. I'm from an Asian country. Like, those are not actually what make us great or lesser or inferior, right?
Yeah. Well, and like one
That's
of
it.
the
That
biggest
should be a
myths.
truth about life, not
Yeah.
debated whether we should simply expel brown people.
No, exactly. And one of the biggest myths that we live with in America is the American founding. And I think like the founding fathers, um, like even just their idealism, but mixed with their own racism, mixed with,
Mhm.
all men are created equal, but not enslaved people, not women, like
Mhm.
uh the Native Americans who, the
Right.
Puritans committed genocide against. I mean, right? I think, but even in that contradictions and all these contradictions,
Mhm.
I think though it also the hope is um America has always been uh an experiment and it's always trying to there's always people who are trying to achieve that equality, that equilibrium.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think that, and I think that's where the creative arts are so powerful is in humanizing, in creating empathy, in connection.
Yes.
And yeah, there might be a segment who really they look at AI and say, "Oh, it'll replace jobs and people won't have to think for themselves," which you have to think because if you read what the AI gives you back, I'll tell you, I can tell when students haven't read over their work.
Oh, yeah. Right now you could tell, but it's getting better every night.
Yeah, yeah. But I
Yeah.
also think how many of us lose that joy? Like, because that's another thing is the joy of creating, right? The joy of you writing, the joy of reading.
Right. And that joy, that dopamine of, oh, I wrote this great short story and I read it in front of my class and people loved it. Like that, I hope we can make it. I hope we can put our finger on the scale in such a way that that is a greater joy and more
Yeah,
dopamine than I scrolled for an hour in TikTok.
yeah.
You got a lot of
Because
cheap
trust me, no
dopamine.
one feels better after they've scrolled for an hour on TikTok.
No, no,
If
but it's
anything, it increases anxiety. I mean, there's so much,
depression,
right? Jonathan
everything.
Haidt, um, Anxious Generation really brought
Yeah.
this to light. But yeah, I mean, I even noticed, oh, if I don't consume a lot of news in a day, again, I think it's good to be aware, but I also think we don't need to consume political news for 24 hours. Like
That
our mind
would
isn't
drive us
built
nuts.
for this.
Yeah.
No, no. So, yeah, Stephen, I just love this conversation. I know you'll have to come back on. We'll have to
There's a lot we didn't cover that I thought we would, but this is great.
I know, and
Yeah.
we'll check back in. I'm going to you know, try out the method, the
Drop in
company.
the group chat and say hello.
I will, I will. Well, I'm starting to get back into my own writing project, so I always
Okay. I
experience.
have questions for you because I talk to a lot of writers
Yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
are in Parasuka. What time of day is your golden time to write?
Mm. That I actually can easily identify. I would say 7 a.m., 8 a.m. I would say 7 a.m. to noon are my ideal times.
Right?
Afternoon, I'm just like starting to move into other activities and definitely never.
You get fragmented, right?
Yeah, yeah. I can do the afternoon, but I can never. I am not good at night. Definitely, I'm not a night writer.
I'll tell you funny. So this idea for those listening of chronotype, which is simply
Yeah.
there are times of day you're more adept at certain things, right? When I was a young punk getting into film, there was a very established screenwriter, this guy, Ron Bass, like Rain Man, My Best Friend's Wedding, like bunch $1 million, scripts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was famous or infamous for not talking to his family in the morning. He would get up like 4:35, 5:30 in the morning. No, hey, good morning, honey. No, who wants pancakes? Who needs a ride to school? Nothing. He would not talk to them. And he said, when I start talking to you, I can't hear my characters' voices in my head anymore. And that's, what he got paid for. He wrote the dialogue that would get a Julia Roberts at the height of her career to say yes, or Tom Cruise at the height of his career to say yes, right?
Mm.
And of course, his family's like, we can make the pancakes, you go make 2 million a script. Like, we're good, Dad. But the fact that you know that about yourself, especially those early morning hours, when creatively, like, you're more clear, like your mind is not filled with all the people, their words and their energy that have been talking to you and emailing you and going to the store, like that, where you have those crystal hours in the morning. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Matter of fact, should I see you in Sukha in the morning, I'll celebrate you, because that is when you will get your stuff done.
Thank you, Steve. Well, and at night I'm actually a better reader because I feel like,
Mhm.
right, it de-stresses when
Yeah,
you're
it's awesome.
reading.
Yeah,
It like
wind down.
helps to wind down the day.
Yep.
Where in the morning I'm a little groggy, but I kind of like that because I'll have my coffee and then I can start writing. And it's like, you're right. Not everyone's awake. I like that there's the quiet stillness. Yeah, so interesting. Well, Stephen, also, who is the author again of that book, Flow?
It's a very hard name to spell, so I'll give it to you. You can put it in the show notes, but his name is
Oh, but it's
Mihai
that
Csikszentmihalyi.
psychologist, right?
Yeah, he wrote Flow.
Wait, is it his first name is Mihaly?
It's pronounced Mihai
Mihai.
Csikszentmihalyi.
Okay.
Yeah, he's Hungarian
Yes.
American.
I see the last name. I'm like, I'm not gonna try
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it's a tough one.
But yeah, Flow, the Psychology of Optimal
That is
Experience.
exactly right. If you ever want to do an episode on flow states, that's like tickle me
Yeah.
elmo for me. I love talking
Yeah,
about that.
well, getting back into my writing, because I have a chapter I'm writing for an Oscar Wilde book, and then
Ooh,
I have my book proposal for my forthcoming book that I'm shopping publishers based on my dissertation. So yeah, I get excited. And something else I also did is I was shopping around Walmart as one does, and I
right.
saw this book on like 300 writing prompts, and I'm like, you know what? I should get this journal that like just asks a prompt
Yeah, it
and
just gets you
things.
writing.
I know things that I ask my students to do. I'm like, wait, I need to like get back
Completely
into writing
agreed.
prompts
Yeah,
because you need that. It's like what you said, you need that actual tangible goal.
yeah,
Because, right, how many times have we all had projects and you're like, oh, I don't have a deadline. I'll do it the next day. And then it's like, nope, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
completely agreed.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. And I'm sure you saw that all the time.
I
You
I
think,
still wrestle with it. Like,
yeah,
I I am the alcoholic at the front of the meeting going, "Hey, my name is Stephen P. I'm an alcoholic, right?" So I need something that helps me get in the zone, something that helps me be accountable. Like these techniques that you hear when you talk, or you listen to Cal Newport, or you listen to Near, or you listen to Kotler. I mean, there's a reason that their books have become popular, because they're like, if you do this stuff, it actually works.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and
Yeah,
you're
there's actual
like a
science
trainer,
behind it.
you have to work out too.
Yeah. Well, no, that's the thing, mind and body connection. I mean,
Yeah,
uh, yeah, and that's the I think that's the falsity is thinking that by you exercising, by you taking time to create, like you don't have those hours in the day, but it's like, no, you actually are going to be more productive by doing these tasks.
exactly. Agreed.
Yeah, well, Stephen, how can everyone find you, please? Your website, any social media,
Yeah, this has been a fantastic episode. I try to stay off social media for obvious reasons, and that I'm encouraging people to do something,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, anyone who wants to reach me, you can come into Sukha, which is thesukha.co, the Sukha company. So THESUKHA.co. And if someone has a question, or if someone like can't afford it and they're just like, hey man, I'm a student or I'm between jobs, I'll happily give you a discount. Just email me, Steven, Steven, at the Sukha, TheSukha.co. Just be like, hey man, I heard John Andrews pod, and I can only afford $5 a month. Can we do it? And I'll say yes. We built this so that people can do something with their lives.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I know that so many listening who are writers are, yeah, working on their
Dude, I love writers.
dissertations,
Yeah.
doing their creative projects. Um, I think it's so important to feel like you're know that there's others who are cheering you on.
Yeah. You're part of a community. You're not alone.
Yeah. Because writing can feel very isolating.
Completely agreed.
Right. And that's like, just seeing the Odyssey, I think you see all the list of those who are part of the production team, and it's like, this is their final product, but what was that? What were all of those hours leading up to this product? It's not just the actors.
Yeah, absolutely right. When we won the Visual Effects Academy Award for Independence Day, I mean,
which is an incredible film.
Yeah, but think on how many people contribute to that. Like that for me, that was the closest I came to, that sort of like achievement in Hollywood of like, oh wow, and that, I produced the digital effects for that. I can name 400 or 500 people that were intimately involved for months and months and months in order to have something that the Academy would say, okay, you win.
Yeah. And I think that, when it comes to the public's perception of Hollywood, and just in my opinion, like, again, I love the actors. The actors are so important, but I think seeing the totality of what it takes for these projects, to reach the Oscars, or to just reach a mass consensus of viewers. I mean, so many hours, so much money.
Yes, so much risk because
so much
a lot
risk.
of people are trying to do it. Yeah,
campaigning. Yeah, it's it's a tiring grind. Well, Stephen, I can't wait to have you back on, and thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to everyone who's still listening.
Yes.